Welcome back to another episode of Plead Your Case.
This is the third time Laurel and Clairton has faced each other in a WPIAL championship game.
And I saw him run the football this past year, and he's a physical runner. He doesn't go down easily.
I think another team that surprised me was Moon. Moon, they beat Upper St. Clair, got pushed over on that Pine side. If they lost to Upper St. Clair, they would have been pushed over onto that Peters Township side.
Far in this playoff picture. So look at those two guys to really drive this offense for the Rebels.
Yeah, and I think
We're kicking it off with 1A here on Plead Your Case today. Brett Gombita, I'm joined by Chase Maceiko and Tyler Aaron. And we're going to be talking about the 1A bracket here. So if we take a look at it, Laurel and Clairton are the two teams that have made their way there. Laurel with a big win over Fort Cherry. Clairton beating Bishop Canevin for the second straight year in that semifinal round to advance to the championship. What are our overall thoughts on the bracket? Any surprises to this point?
Well, you got to see the big surprise was number 1 seed Fort Cherry falling to Laurel here in the semifinal round last Friday. Fort Cherry mercy rolled all of their opponents that they played in every game throughout the entire regular season and up into the quarterfinal round of the playoffs when they beat the Nushannock Lancers. So for the Laurel Spartans to come in as an underdog here, I know they're the number 4 seed, just to come in and get this huge win over Fort Cherry, who's won their last 40 games against WPIAL opponents. It's huge for the Laurel Spartans and a big motivator for them coming into this game against Clairton.
Yeah, it has to be Fort Cherry. You look at the top 4 teams in the semis, the 1 through 4 seeds. So Fort Cherry, the back-to-back WPIAL champions. Of course, it's a shock that they're out. The legacy of Matt Sieg finally comes to pass. And we thought it might end a little bit sooner. After his sophomore year, they graduated the whole offensive line. I know some of the talk around the 1A scene was that they wouldn't be able to do it again. They get the second championship in a row, and you thought they were going to go for the third, but Matt C gets hurt a couple weeks ago. They can't get it done, and we got a fresh set, a new champion this year.
All 4 Tri-County South teams lost in the first round. A couple of them in upset fashion on that right half of the bracket. Bentworth defeated by Jeanette in the first round. Fraser defeated California. A couple of upsets there. Another one I wanted to touch on real quick is Chartiers Houston beating number 5 Southside in the first round, 26-21. They ultimately fell to Laurel, who is representing that quadrant of the bracket in the finals. But before we get into our Laurel and Clairton discussion, what would your prediction have been ahead of time? Would you have had that Fort Cherry-Clairton matchup once again?
Yeah, I think I would have had that Fort Cherry-Clairton matchup. I think based off of Matt Sieg's injury, I wouldn't have taken Fort Cherry. Clairton was 1 point away last year from having that WPIAL championship. And this year, with a not healthy Matt Sieg, I could take Clairton in that high-powered offense. We'll get more into that as we roll into the next questions. But I think Clairton, Fort Cherry would have been my final, and I think Clairton would have had it.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. I really think that would have been my final 2. I could make an argument for the number 3 seed in this bracket in Bishop Canevin, and it was pretty much going to be a toss-up for me last week when both of them played in the semifinal round. And fortunately for Clairton, they got the job done. They got the big win over Bishop Canevin. So we'll see how things shake up here on Saturday.
Now, who are some impact players we can see on both sides here for the Laurel Spartans and for the Clairton Bears?
Well, for Laurel, I got to go Lucas Santini and Colton Carlson here. Lucas Santini he was a starting quarterback his sophomore year, which was the last time Clairton and Laurel played each other 2 seasons ago, and both starting quarterbacks in Jeff Thompson and Lucas Santini were both quarterbacks in that game that resulted in a 44-7 win for Clairton. That was the WPIAL round 1. But Lucas Santini, 75 for 135, 1,296 passing yards for the senior quarterback. For Colton Carlson, receiving, rushing, whatever you want to say here, 688 receiving yards, 836 rushing yards as well, and 11 touchdowns for Colton Carlson.
Yeah, and then I'll take that Clairton side once again. Jeffrey Thompson, the quarterback. If you look, including week 0, 33 touchdowns to 3 interceptions, over 2,000 yards total. And then for the rushing attack, Dion Lovelace Pompey, over 700 yards and a dozen touchdowns. This Clairton offense also has 4 receivers, over 400 yards receiving. So this is just some classic 1A football of some high percentage explosive plays from all sides of the bracket.
Brody Geiwitz has made a pretty big impact for Laurel defensively as well so far in these WPIAL playoffs. I announced a Laurel game in the first round against Jefferson Morgan. I wanted to mention a play that they ran. I don't know if you saw the clip on social media. I posted it, but basically they huddled up and they started spinning around in motion like the Kansas City Chiefs did that one time. I wonder if we're going to see that here on this Saturday. But we'll get into our predictions here. I guess we'll start at the end of the table. Tyler, Aaron, who do you have winning this one?
I'm going to have the Laurel Spartans here in this one. I just want to mention this. This is the 3rd time Laurel and Clairton has faced each other in a WPIAL championship game. The first time was in 1980, and it was a 14-12 victory for the Laurel Spartans. That is their one and only WPIAL championship. Second time, 1989. Clairton wins this one 27-20, and it's crazy. I have this fun little nugget here. Clairton played Laurel in 1989. Clairton's quarterback, Wayne Wade, was the quarterback for Clairton in 1989. He is now the head coach for Clairton. Laurel featured Ryan Miles, who played for Laurel, and his dad, George, was a coach for Laurel. Now, both of those guys are coaches for the Laurel Spartans now, and their son and grandson, Jack Miles, is now a senior for the Laurel Spartans. So it's just a whole bunch of full circle moments here. And Luque Santini said in his postgame, he grew up watching the Steelers and Ben Roethlisberger, and it's really cool that he can share a field of what Big Ben used to play on. But I got the Laurel Spartans in this one. I think it's going to be really close in this one, though.
Listen, I'm taking the opposite here. We've talked about this all day today. I'm going with the Clairton Bears. They've lost one game this season. It was in week 0 to Imani Christian, where they only put up 12 points. Besides that game, the lowest amount of points the Bears put up this season, 38 points. This isn't going to be a close game in my mind. The Bears, they're putting up at least 35, and I think they run away with a WPIAL championship after they could have had one last season.
To go with what Chase said here, it's worth mentioning that week 0 loss to Clairton, or that Clairton's week 0 loss to Imani Christian. Imani Christian is now in the 3A championship. We'll get to that talk later, but I'll make my pick here since I have the deciding vote, and I'm going to take the Clairton Bears. They've had no trouble these playoffs so far, just coasting past teams, and I think that they keep the momentum up here this weekend. So stay tuned here. We're going to get into some more classifications here on Plead Your Case.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back into Plead Your Case. I'm Cole Keller. Joined beside me is Chase Maceiko, and we're going to be talking about 2A WPIAL football, and especially covering the championship matchup, Steel Valley versus Seton LaSalle. Steel Valley hasn't been there in a while. Seton LaSalle was just here last year. Now we're going to take a look at the bracket. As you can see, Seton defeated Washington, who they faced off in for the conference championship, and Steel Valley beat Western Beaver, who was the number 2 seed, making their trip back to the WPIAL championships. Chase, give me a little rundown about Steel Valley.
Yeah, for Steel Valley, they're all about their rushing attack. And Deron Barksdale, 163.3 yards per game this season for Steel Valley, 26 touchdowns on the season. And they really rely on not only the rushing attack, but a strong defense. They've allowed just 6.5 points per game over this playoff run, facing, like we said, Western Beaver, along with Elwood City, and they had a bye in round 1. So they've played some really sound football, both on offense and defense, to get them there to this point.
Yeah, Steel Valley, as the number 3 seed, I felt that they had a very formidable slate going into the matchup against Western Beaver, where they'd eventually play them. And I watched Steel Valley early in the season. I watched our first game against Westinghouse, and to be honest, I wasn't very impressed. I think Deron Barksdale, he was pretty much the whole entire team, and I was like, I don't know if this team is as competitive as whenever I was in high school. They had Cruz Brookins, they had Greg Smith, they had dogs everywhere, and that team was very special. And Deron is a very special talent, 4-star committed to Pitt, and I think that Seton is going to have a very tough time trying to keep him in check. Now, Chase, I want you to just give me a little rundown about Seton LaSalle.
Yeah, for Seton LaSalle, it starts with Kymar Freeman, the running back, 1,300 yards, over 1,300 yards this season, 21 touchdowns. And then at quarterback, Kia Jones Jr., over 700 yards and 7 touchdowns. So they're really going to rely on these two guys to keep that offense moving forward, especially against Steel Valley, who, as we said earlier, has a very strong defense so far in this playoff picture. So look at those two guys to really drive this offense for the Rebels.
Yeah, and I think we were talking about this off the screen. This isn't the same Seton LaSalle team as last year where they had Khalil Taylor. This year I feel like they have a more bona fide quarterback in Kia Jones Jr., and I think that this team is still very good. They still have people on the defensive side of things. Aaron Loridis, Will Martin. Seton is still good. This is a very good matchup and very fun. Now, I have tied in for my last question, biggest surprise and biggest letdown, because for me, one team immediately sticks out who was my favorite at the preseason to win 2A.
Yeah, for me, I think the biggest surprise is going to be Western Beaver losing in the semifinal. I really thought, based on everything we saw from them over the course of the season, that they would have at least put up a better fight against Steel Valley. 34-7, they lost that ball game. And as a 2 seed, they beat Apollo Ridge 41-13. Just not the type of performance you see out of a 2 seed in the semifinals. So Western Beaver, definitely a disappointment for me.
My biggest disappointment, and I was very disappointed whenever I seen what was going to happen. It was South Allegheny, and whenever they were going up against Wash High, I was a little bit worried because overall South Allegheny is a tremendous talent. The Cook brothers, the eldest brother, he's really good. Great wide receivers, been good all 4 of his years at South Allegheny, and his younger brother, Elijah. I just really thought that South Allegheny team was special, and South Allegheny has a lot on their shoulders, especially last year after they won the WPIAL championship, defeating Aliquippa for basketball. And I just thought, maybe there might be a spark there in South Allegheny. But Chase, now we're going to get to what matters. Who do you have winning, Seton LaSalle or Steel Valley?
Yeah, I'm taking the Rebels here. And this kind of goes with what I said in my 1A prediction. The Rebels in the championship last year had an opportunity to win the big game. This year they come back with experience. They have Freeman, like we said, there to be a star player for them. So I have the Rebels picking up the win. They are the 1 seed. They are the favorite. Give me the Rebels.
Yeah, Chase, I have to agree with you. I think Seton has a very good team this year. They just have to limit Deron Barksdale. But don't go anywhere. Here on Plead Your Case, coming up next is Joe Shirillo with the 2-minute drill.
Welcome into the 2-minute drill here on PYC. I'm Joe Shirillo. This past Saturday, the WPIAL or WPIAL kicked off their football championships. This time, instead of being at Norwin High, which is being relocated to Pine Richland. And there was a surprising result to follow. The McKeesport Tigers took on the Aliquippa Quips, where McKeesport came into the contest being heavy favorites. 5-star running back Keemon Spell was in attendance, and he kicked off the scoring with a 68-yard rushing touchdown. Tigers led 6-0 with 3 minutes into the football game. From there, though, the Aliquippa defense stood strong. QB Marquez Council broke the near 9-minute stalemate and had a 24-yard run for the Quips, giving them the 7-6 lead, leaving the first quarter. Aliquippa quickly got back down to the field on their following drive, and Council fouled Josh Lay via a 3-yard touchdown. Quip was up 14-6 until less than 3 minutes later. Spell responded again with his second touchdown of the game, making the score 14-12 into the half. The game went with no scoring in the third quarter and almost nothing in the fourth, but Aliquippa put the dagger in as Quileel Good caught a 24-yard pass from Council and gave us the final score of 21-12, giving Aliquippa the upset win in the 4A WPIAL title. At 6 o'clock later that night, the Class 6A title was on display as an annual rivalry at this point was renewed in the championship game. Pittsburgh Central Catholic versus North Allegheny. Only thing was, this wasn't a rivalry tonight. Jaden Alexander had an opening kickoff touchdown to start the game. Roman Thompson had 2 rushing touchdowns, and that was all just in the first half. PCC led 28-0 into the half, and the Vikings never let go nor slowed down. PCC went on to score 2 more touchdowns, and Cameron Kushner got the only touchdown for the Tigers as the final score came 42-7. The Vikings are now back-to-back Class 6A WPIAL champions. That will conclude on this quick 2-minute drill here on Plead Your Case. I'm Joe Cirillo, and when we come back here, we'll be kicking off our second half of the WPIAL special.
Welcome back to the PYC WPIAL special. I'm Stone Manges alongside BEN TENUTA. We are going to talk about the 3A WPIAL championship. It's going to be between Avonworth and Imani Christian. And here's how we got here. Here's the bracket for 3A. Avonworth, they had to go through Freeport and North Catholic. They had a bye in the first round. And Imani Christian, they also had a bye. They defeated Hopewell and Central Valley. The scores in the semifinal games, Imani Christian defeated Central Catholic 48-0, and Avonworth defeated North Catholic 44-22. Again, I'm alongside BEN TENUTA, and we're going to discuss this WPIAL championship game for 3A. Ben, we're going to look at the bracket. Is there anything that really surprised you with these teams and how they got here and the teams that they defeated?
No, not really. I think Avonworth, I saw them play week 1 of the season, and see them in person, how dominant they are, physical they are offensively, and you know they got a lot of weapons and talents, and I wasn't surprised to see them in the WPIAL championship. Now for Imani though, I was pretty surprised just for the fact that Imani's usually doesn't punch their ticket to the title game. They've had a lot of success these past few seasons, but they never got it to make it to the stadium with the gold seats. So to see him here this year kind of surprised me, but I'm excited to see this 3A matchup on Saturday.
Yeah, this is Imani Christian's first appearance in the WPIAL championship since 2017, just the second time that they've punched their ticket to the championship game. Previously, they lost in 2017 to Jeanette, 35-34, in a heartbreaking 1-point loss. But you want to talk about Avonworth. This team, they've made it to the WPIAL championship 3 years in a row now, 1-1 up to this point. This is the 4th appearance all time for Avonworth, and you mentioned it, they've got a ton of studs on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, the first guy I want to talk about is Luca Nill. Luca Nill was our KDK Radio Super 7 award winner last season, and I saw Luca Nill play Wildcat in the state championship last year where they fell to team slipping in my mind at the moment, but they lost the state championship last year to Northwestern Lehigh, and I saw him run the football this past year, and you know he's a physical runner. He doesn't go down easily, and especially for his size, you know you wouldn't expect that. But Avonworth on all cylinders with their offensive line, and you know the way that he runs the football. This year he's playing wide receiver. They got a guy named Dimitri Valasaurus, who is their main running back, and this year he's ran it for over 1,200 yards and 22 touchdowns. So they got weapons at running back and wide receiver, and Carson Bellinger, he's been their quarterback for the past few seasons. He's thrown for 26 touchdowns this year and only 1 interception. I know they don't throw the football too often, but with the guy Luca Nill on the other side of the field, they got a lot of talent. So I'm excited to see how they match up against the studs and talent that Imani has.
Yeah, this is about as close as a matchup as you're going to have. And you look at some of the stats, points per game and points allowed. Avonworth has scored 42 points per game on average, Imani 48. Avonworth has allowed on average 8 points a game, Imani 7. And in the first 2 rounds of the playoffs, the first 2 games in this 3A bracket, they both have scored over 100 points, averaging well over 50 points per game in those first 2 games. So they've got 2 great offenses going up against each other, and then 2 really good defensive units. So what for you is going to be the difference in who wins this game at Acrisure?
I think the difference is going to be the offensive line. I know I mentioned before that Avonworth has a huge line. Whoever can win the battle on the line offensively and defensively, I think can win the game. And who can establish that run game is going to be very important on both sides of the ball. They got talent on Imani. Gabe Jenkins, obviously a stud. He's going to play defense on the next level. And, he's their quarterback. He could run all over the field, but he's got to have a good offensive line. They need to give him protection throughout the day. And I think that's going to be an important key, thing for them to be able to get the win on Saturday.
So we're going to go ahead and make our championship picks for 3A now. So, Ben, who do you got, Avonworth or Imani?
I'm going to go the Antelopes. I saw them play earlier this season, how physical they were. They're the 1 seed. And like you said, they've been scoring points all year. So I'm going with the Avonworth Antelopes.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a really close game. As we mentioned, a really good defensive unit for both sides and a really good offensive unit for both sides. I think this game could come down to a touchdown, maybe a field goal. I'm going to go Avonworth, though, 28-21. The winner of this game will go on and face the winner of Pencambria and Sharon in the PIAA 3A semifinals. Again, for Ben Tenuta, Stone Manges, don't go anywhere. You're watching the WPIAL PYC Special.
Money.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, into Plead Your Case. This time we're talking about Classification 5A in the WPIAL Championship. I'm Benicio DeFalco, and to my left we have a very special guest. Ben Tenuta joins us in the studio for the first time, along with Cole Keller. Gentlemen, Pine Richland defeated Moon 34-24 on Friday, and then Peters Township defeated Upper St. Clair 30-6. To get to this point, what are some teams that have exceeded expectations or disappointed to this point in the 5A?
Well, for me, I would say Woodland Hills really disappointed me. Scoop Smith, obviously one of the top athletes in the WPIAL, being his final season and things like that. I was kind of excited to see Woody make a run, especially against Upper St. Clair, but I didn't get to see that game. I know Cole was at that game and got to experience firsthand what that was like. And then obviously Upper St. Clair really surprised me with their run, but ultimately Peters Township, I kind of saw this coming. I thought they were going to make a WPIAL run, but seeing them in the championship wasn't too surprising to me. But I think they have a good shot to surprise some people, especially the way they've been playing.
Yeah, and I have to piggyback off Ben. I think Woody had a fantastic year. And at the end, if you watch that Upper St. Clair game, it was 36-26 as the final. And really when it came down to it, they were just outcoached, Woodland Hills that is. Coach Junko from Upper St. Clair just outcoached Woody. And that was the problem. Woody has far better athletes, far better talent than Upper St. Clair, but Upper St. Clair knew how to use what they had against Woody and how to take away their main options, Scoop Smith. Scoop really didn't get the ball during that game. And I think another team that surprised me was Moon. I mean, Moon, they beat Upper St. Clair, got pushed over on that Pine side. If they lost to Upper St. Clair, they would have been pushed over onto that Peters Township side. And I think even though they lost to Peters Township earlier in the season, that they would have fared better a second time around. It's always hard to beat a team twice, especially in high school football, where any given Friday, you don't know what the outcome could be. And I think Moon, talent-wise, matched up very well against Pine Richland talent-wise, which was the problem. They both have a lot of athletes. And also Moon's quarterback during that game, Andrew Cross, he got hurt. He got taken out by DeJour Webb from Pine Richland. And I think if that doesn't happen, that game may be a little bit closer than some people have thought.
So Pine Richland and Peters Township are the only two teams remaining. These two teams met in the championship last season, with Pine Richland getting the victory 20-9. In that game, Aaron Strader threw for 147 yards and 2 passing touchdowns, one of them being to Jay Timmons, who's a 5-star committed to Penn State or Ohio State. Now they're alongside with Khalil Taylor. Do we expect the same type of performance, or are we going to expect them to do a little bit better now that they have more star power?
So this is a rematch of the last 3 years. Last year, as you alluded to, Pine won 20-9. The year before that, Peters won 43-17. And then in 2022, Pine won 5A against Upper St. Clair 34-3. And in 2021, Pine won against Peters in the quarterfinals 20-14, only to lose to Penn Trafford, who ended up winning the WPIAL title that year against Moon. And in 2020, Pine won against Peters again to win, and then went on to win state against Cathedral Prep. So overall, if you're looking at the stat sheet and the track record of things, Pine, I don't want to say owns Peters, but they have a fair chance of lucking out and being able to beat Peters, especially with how heavy their offense is and how star-loaded they are.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of went down the whole story, the whole rabbit hole, yeah. So I think Pine really has a lot of great talent. Ubi Schrader, like you mentioned, one of the best quarterbacks in the WPIAL, and I feel like a lot of people, they mentioned the 5-stars and the 4-star Khalil Taylor, Jay Timmons, and stuff like that. Their squad is really all around. But don't get me wrong, Peters Township also has some great talent on their side. Division I talent like Reston Leanham, Lucas Shanafel, Nolan DeLucia at quarterback, and their running back, Cole Newpaver. He's been a threat all season. So I wouldn't say Pine Richland's got a really good shot to even do better than this year. I would say this is a like you said, it's a repeated matchup from the last 3 championships, but these two squads know each other. This game means blood, basically, because these guys do not like each other based off what the results of last year and these past few seasons. So I think it's going to be a close one, and I think there are two top matchups in the WPIAL, and it's going to be a great Saturday night.
Yeah, another name you just mentioned, quarterback Nolan DeLucia. It's hard not to talk about this guy. He's one of the toughest players in the WPIAL. Just last season, they knocked him off his game a little bit, forcing him to run 21 times. What is he going to have to do in this game in order for Peters Township to get the victory?
So I have on my sheet how Peters can win offensively. They must protect Nolan DeLucia and feed Cole Newpaver. Against Bethel Park, he had 135 yards and 4 touchdowns, plus a touchdown pass that he caught. And versus USC, he rushed 26 times for 146 yards and 2 touchdowns. If they can kind of take that weight off of Nolan's back, he's going to be able to do a lot more things. Now, granted, they have less athletes, like they don't have a Nick McCullough anymore, but they still have Lucas Ross, who they can still use, and they did utilize against Upper St. Clair. But if you watch, Nolan's just big kid, very physical, and if he's playing at somewhere like, if he plays at a Central, he's a nationally ranked quarterback, and I totally wholeheartedly believe that. But since he's playing down in 5A at Peters, a smaller, local school, he's just not getting the recognition that I think he deserves, but he's a tremendous talent.
Yeah, I'd probably say the same thing. They got to get the run game going, get that pressure off of Nolan DeLucia, and also be able to separate give some play action in there, and let him play some football. I've seen him the last couple of seasons. He's a dual threat quarterback. He can do a little bit of everything, and giving him that time in the pocket would be very important for him. And hopefully his wide receivers can find some separation, because Pine Richland's got some of the top secondary in the WPIAL. So. Yeah, I think they just need some time to develop and things like that.
So we got down into the nitty and gritty. Gentlemen, we got to declare a champion. Who's your champion and why?
You want to go first?
Sure, I'll go first. I'll probably say this is a tough one. I'm going to go with Pine Richland. I think Pine Richland's, we talked about all night how the athletes that Pine Richland has, and I do think that you'll see a similar result of the plays that Jay Timmons made last year. Tanner Cunningham, who's not playing for Pine right now, but he was able to have a great game in that last championship last year. So I think a similar result, and I think Ubi and Khalil and Timmons, they could have a great night.
Yeah, and I have to agree with Ben. I said this on Friday at the Peters Upper St. Clair game. Peters and Upper St. Clair, it's a big rivalry, but overall Peters just has the better athletes and match up better against Upper St. Clair. If they matched up against the Moon, like I alluded to earlier, it may have been a different story, just like how Pine and Moon both matched up with the athletes and talents that they have. On my paper, I have let Ubi air it out. He has a better receiving core this year. Watching Jay from last year to this year, he's gotten so much better. And mostly it's on the defensive side of things, because he feels like the weight of being the only number one target in that offense is off of his shoulders now that they have Khalil. And I think that's going to be another big storyline there, is having Khalil, him being eligible for the playoffs despite transferring from Seton LaSalle. And I think if they air it out, Peters doesn't have the corners and the DBs to cover either of those guys. They are going to have to run it too high, which will then open up the run game. And it's not like Pine has a bad running back with McLean Miller. And I think, they're just going to beat them purely off of speed.
Well, I'm going to take Pine Richland as well. I hate to be boring here, but with that firepower and that star power on the offensive and defensive side of the ball, it's very hard to go against them. But that's going to wrap up today's episode of Plead Your Case, going over all classifications of the WPIAL and taking our champion. So as always, thank you so much for watching.